middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है.
Why should it be a problem? If I'm smart enough to have multiple options, you should be admiring me.
भारत झुकने वाला भी नहीं.
The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others.
The old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and in this video we are going to talk about why nostalgia is not a strategy. Something big has happened actually in the global system, in the world order right now, and one of those big things that happened is that India and Japan are planning to do something big. They are preparing for something much bigger than your normal trade agreement. And if you look into it, then India and Japan trade currently stands around $27.5 billion for the year 2026. And more than 1,400 Japanese companies currently operate in India. And India and Japan have already maintained a $75 billion of bilateral swap arrangement. And what's happening is that both countries are planning to trade in the national currency, yen and rupee settlement. Now the question really is that why is that? Why this is a big deal? See, it's a big deal because if it was some random country, some other country that has been anti-West from the get-go, then yeah, it makes sense. But Japan has US naval base over there, and it is also said, if you believe the conspiracy theories and all, then for the most part it has been believed that Japan's political system is also being controlled by Americans. So what is going on here? Why is Japan going to sign an agreement with India to trade in the national currency? So that's what it is. Let's talk about it. Let's see what's going on, and let's get going. Let's get started. Okay, please do like and subscribe. And yes, if you think that this is just some sort of dopamine type thing, then please do walk away. You don't have to worry about it. But if you want to learn, then yes, this is it. And this is where I'm going to talk about the world order all the time. I talk about these things. Okay, so stay with me. Please do like and subscribe, and let's get started. Okay, now my slide is always why India and Japan are quietly bypassing the dollar. What's going on here? First of all, let's look at the information, what exactly it is. See, India and Japan may take the dollar out of the trade payments with yen and rupee settlement plan. And this has been a very heavy duty news. So what exactly is going on is that Japan's Prime Minister, Ms. Takaishi, she is scheduled to visit India from July 1st to July 3rd for the India-Japan annual summit. And this will be her first official visit to India since taking office in late 2025. Okay. So according to India's Ministry of External Affairs, that both sides will review the full spectrum of bilateral cooperation and exchange the views on regional and global issues of mutual interest. And clearly those regional and global issues of mutual interest are number one, what? Number one is the economy. Number two is the energy. Number three is the security. These three are the major thing, and these three are the major pain points for Japan. And these three are the major pain points for India as well. So what exactly is going on? And what is that under the proposed framework, whatever they are discussing, the Japanese entities will even though they may be non-resident now, they can open the accounts in the Indian banks, which is called the Vostro accounts. Okay, so India does the trade in national currencies through Nostro and Vostro accounts. Now, Nostro and Vostro accounts is very simple, that Indian companies can open account in the Japanese bank, and Japanese companies can open account in the Indian banks. Okay, so in this way, what's gonna happen is that whatever investments they put in India, that will automatically, it gets converted into rupee, and whatever India does, it go rupee, that gets converted into yen. Okay, and this way, what happens is that these both countries can control the trade flow. Why? Because it creates a dependency of what? Dependency of too much trade deficit will cause what? Too much trade deficit will cause one country's currency in a very high volume sitting in the bank doing nothing. So this, which means that if, let's say, India and Japan are there, okay, and if trade deficit goes beyond, say, $15 billion, which is the trade deficit between India and Japan, India imports more from Japan and exports less, almost $6 billion export, and Japan actually exports almost, say, some 18 or $19 billion, around that. So total trade deficit is around 13 to $15 billion. Okay. Now, and the total trade is $28 billion right now. So if trade deficit grows, let's say, then there will be a lot of Indian rupees sitting in Japanese banks. So Japan will have to figure a way out to utilize that rupee. What will Japan do? Japan will take that rupee and put it back into the Indian market. That's the strategy. Okay. So what India basically is doing is that India is simply trading with these countries, and India is using its market as a leverage. India is not showing countries a bond market. India is not asking countries for FPIs as in foreign portfolio indexes. India is not asking them or begging them that, hey, let's go do foreign direct investment as well. No, India is saying that, come invest in our country. Fair enough. Now, how do you do that? Let's do it in national currency trade. What will they do? Like I just said, what it's going to do is that rupee goes into Japanese market. Now, what Japan will do? Japan is going to take that rupee and invest back into the Indian market. Technically, what's happening is that India is getting all its rupee back into its market, just like US did. What US did? US stock market became huge. Why? Because when the unipolar world started and when US actually created this petrodollar system, then US started to ask all these countries, Middle Eastern countries, that you sell our oil in dollar, and then what you do is that you take the dollar and invest into our stock market, our bonds, our securities, and you can invest in our country too. And that's what started to happen. Okay, that's the strategy. It is pretty much the same strategy. So what US is doing, what is dollar? Dollar is the national currency of the United States, right? So what US is saying, US is simply dealing with, trading with all these countries, technically in national currencies. Okay, so a national currency that is presented to everyone as a reserve currency. But what's happening is the US has already been trading with every other country in national currencies. Only drawback that happened up until now, the flaw in this whole entire system was that other countries started to trade in dollar too. Because the dollar volume became so much that other countries were like, hey, dollar is easily available, let's trade with each other. Otherwise, if you just take US and India trade, that's happening in national currencies in a way. But yeah, of course, in the US is not taking rupee. Okay, but that's because of the structure. But for US, it is the trade in national currencies. Why? Because US is trading with everyone in dollar, right? Anyways, coming back to the point. So that's what exactly is going on here. But why that is the case? And that's what we're going to discuss today, okay? So let's see. Number one reason for this whole thing is the multipolar world Why? Because the multipolar world actually expects more supply chain shocks. The supply chain shocks that we saw in Hormuz right now, or we are seeing in Hormuz right now, that's actually nothing. Also, what you saw in Venezuela, that's also nothing. These are just the beginnings. Okay, a country that is, and I'm not saying this compared because of the United States or anything. No, I'm not saying this thing. This can be done by any powerful country. They can just go and just create a mess. Even Chinese can go and start to create mess in South China Sea. That's going to disrupt the entire supply chain, right? So it could be anything, and it could be any country. But for the most part, people expect that yeah, US is going to do it, and for a good reason too. So countries are expecting more choke point shocks. Countries are expecting that when this type of thing happens, when the choke point shocks happen, the most of the market, actually the energy market, is what that gets impacted, right? And energy trade basically absorbs most of the impact. And so what this is doing is that countries are now de-risking their economy. What they're doing is that they are trying to trade in the national currencies. They're trying to go for the shorter supply chains, because supply chains that are very long, that create problem, and shorter supply chains are a lot better. And in shorter supply chains, you can trade on this road and all too. So that's what's going on. And de-risking, other thing is that they are another way of de-risking is that countries are looking for alternative alternative currencies for trade, alternative payment and settlement systems, alternative insurance policy systems, right? So slowly what you're going to see is that all these major economies and the major powers that are there, they will start to offer the maritime insurances as well, instead of relying on Lloyd of London or somebody else. Okay, they're going to start offering all that. Like India has already started to offer, Russians are working on it, Chinese are starting to do that, pretty soon Japanese will start to do that as well. It all depends on how many ships Japan has and how much its trade is impacted. So if India and Japan trade, let's say, grows, which it will, then Japan, in its part of the world, Japan will start to offer the maritime insurance as well. Okay, so this is how the globe or the global powers are actually de-risking the economy. Why? Because they're expecting more and more choke point shocks ahead. And because the Western world, especially a power that has been that's going downhill, every power that is going downhill has this tendency to somehow I would say somehow it's oppose the change, the inertia, right? Inertia. And but there will be a rift between inertia and the entropy here, because entropy's tendency is to find the equilibrium. So entropy is going to shift away from the US or the west side towards the Asian continent back. And if you look into it, all the major powers right now are in the Asian continent, right? And because they are in the Asian continent, so entropy is going to find the equilibrium here a lot easier than somewhere else. But US as a power is not going to go down just like that. They're gonna resist this whole entire change, and in the result of that resistance is gonna be what? The more choke point shocks. What you saw happen in Iran, the whole Hormuz and all that, was not because Iran is going to have nuclear weapons. No, Iran's nuclear weapons were not the problem. If that was the case, then why nobody attacked North Korea and why nobody attacked Pakistan? Pakistan is a major threat, quite frankly, if you ask me. I mean, no other country is as much of a threat as Pakistan. At least North Koreans don't even go and make threats to anyone. But Pakistanis, look at them day in and day out. Iranians even said that, hey, we don't have nuclear weapons. So what exactly happened here? Problem was that Iran had oil in it. Iran had oil and Iran was pretty close to a choke point. So Iran was used as a bait and used as a, I would say, for the lack of better word, let's stick with bait. Okay, Iran was used as a pawn, you can say, and Israel was also used as a pawn to do the damage. All right, Israel thinks that Iran is going to attack, Iran is going to do this and that, but Iran is not going to do anything. If Iran had to do something, Iran would have done it long time ago. Okay, especially when Israel was very weak at that point. So the problems of choke points are going to happen more and more. Look at what happened in Latin America, in Venezuela. Right? United States has a president that makes more bombing and killing threats than Taliban and Lashkar-e-Taiba and ISIS. Do you hear from ISIS ever? Do you ever hear from ISIS saying that we're going to bomb the shit out of you? No. Do you hear from Taliban saying that, hey, we're going to bomb the crap out of you? But we have a president who enjoys making these type of threats. So I don't know. That line is getting a little bit of blurry who's who at this point. Okay. Anyways, so that's why. So my reason for mentioning all this is that this is why world believes that there will be more choke point sharks. All right, world is full of very smart leaders, very powerful and very seasoned leaders. They understand exactly what is going on. Okay, just because you are framing it in a certain way that Iran will have nuclear weapons, all that horse shit, then it doesn't mean that world will believe it. Okay, if Iran wanted to use nuclear weapons, let's just say hypothetically, then Iran can still use that 400 kilograms of enriched uranium to make dirty bombs and go drop it on Israel. What you think, Israel will be safe after that? No. So making all these excuses is just horseshit. Why? Because actual problem was the choke point. What exactly, if you look into it, the US did? First attack on Iran basically took out Saudi Arabia, all those bases and all, and then Iran said that we are going to we're going to block the Strait of Hormuz. US said that, okay, you block the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to make sure that any ship that buys oil from you won't be able to pass. But technically, it was a double blockade of the choke points, right? So that's one reason. And in this whole process of finding the alternatives so that countries can survive and be resilient, build a resilient supply chain, resilient economy and all that, Japan and India are going to trade in national currencies. And if you look into Japan, back in 80s when Japanese economy was on top, Japanese electronics was on top, Japanese cars had a rock solid market in US. But guess what happened after that? When the US automakers, they realized that Japanese cars are taking over, they blocked it. And the US dependency that was there for Japanese automakers and all that, it became a problem for Japan's economy, right? But now India is the biggest automobile market right now. India is the largest electronics market. It's a market of pretty much everything. Where do you think Japan is gonna go? Right? That's why. Then comes the reason number 2 is, I think I might have explained this thing in my first reason, that Japan and India need each other's trade. So, see what Japan needs. Japan needs a population to do the work. Japan's aging population is shrinking and this is hurting its economy. Japanese companies are looking for some major market because Of course, they need some huge replacement for US market, right? So what are you going to do? Would you rather be with a country, trade with a country whose military age population is of the size of the United States total population? Or would you rather go and trade somewhere else where, because of the dependency, you're going to get blocked? You can get sanctions, you can get tariffs, whatever. So, Japanese have realized this, and this is why 1,400 Japanese companies they operate in India, and this is gonna grow actually. Okay, and with yen and rupee trade, this is even gonna become even bigger. Why? Because whatever yen India is going to get in for India, this matters. Okay, and I'm going to talk about the yen and rupee transaction, how that's going to play out, and why that is in the next region. Okay, but right now, India's Gen Z, the younger population, the military age population needs jobs. The biggest problem, India's domestic problem, I would say, is the job. And at the rate India's talent pool is growing each year on year, it's growing. Job is not growing at that rate. Okay, so this is why India has figured out a way to export its services. Okay, so India has a very huge services market. Why India's services market is used? Because India is forced to utilize its services market, and India is also working, while India is working on the manufacturing. Why manufacturing? Okay, because manufacturing infrastructure takes lots of time to establish. Okay, so by the time the manufacturing infrastructure is set up and real manufacturing starts, the export starts and all that, that's going to take some time. So what, India is going to sit there and wait? No, India has to use its talent pool. India has to use India has to make arrangement for its population, the younger population, so that they can get the jobs, they can grow. And if you look into it, then right now India has the third largest pool of unicorns. India actually tops the list in the startups. Then India services is on top. India's AI is getting on top right now. All this is happening. Why? Because of the younger population, and Japan sees that. So that's another win-win for both countries. Okay, so that's why India and Japan are looking to do this. And if they trade in dollar in this type of system, look what happened in Russia. When Russians were sanctioned, then all the Western countries and other countries, they just took off. And when they took off, then Russian markets basically were hit with serious hyperinflation because of the lack of the products. But good thing is that at least Chinese covered it. Then Indian firms are there now. They are doing it. And slowly, I believe that Japanese companies will enter Russian market as well. But that's going to happen. Let's see how that's going to play out. But it will. So that's another reason. That's reason number 2. Now let's talk about reason number 3. This is important. Okay. See, India wants an alternative reserve currency. So what you have to understand is that in rupee yen trade, yen is already a reserve currency, okay, which is, this status simply means that it is globally accepted. Settled directly in yen, settling anything in yen directly gives India a credible liquid alternative to routing everything through the dollar. What does that mean? It means that now let's say if India slowly walks away from dollar, let's say tomorrow if US sanctions it, then India still have yen, because India's currency is not that huge. So India will still have yen, a reserve currency that India can use to import things, to trade, right? All that. So and then other thing is that Indian RBI, Reserve Bank of India, actually has got this instruction from the government that they need to internationalize the rupee. This is why India has actually signed lots and lots of trade or agreements with countries to trade in the national currencies too. This number is almost 30 plus actually, 30 plus countries. And now let me put this in perspective here a little bit, okay? Uh, when I say 30 plus countries, those countries trade with India in rupee, okay? And only top 50 economies, I would, if you look at the numbers, you can go verify my numbers too, that almost top 40 or top 50 economies have 95 to 98% of the dollar trade and dollar reserves. That's it. Top 40 and top 50 economies. After that, slowly and slowly, there will be little bit of dollar, but it's not substantial to make a dent. And slowly, that number actually starts to go down. Top 50, then top 60, 70, like that. Slowly and slowly, you will see that after, by the time it reaches 100, you will see that dollar reserve is probably $1 billion, $2 billion, which is pretty negligible actually. Okay. So top 40 to top 50 countries only actually trade in dollar, majority of it. And out of those, 28 are European countries. And European countries are going to slowly and slowly walk away from the dollar as well. All right. Now, why I am telling you this, right? I am telling you this because India already has there are 30 countries that are actually they accept rupee trade. Okay. And then once India's free trade agreement with European Union kicks in, then if my information is correct, then India and European Union are also going to trade in rupee and euro. Okay, which mean and I will give you a simple example of it. It may be, it may not. I mean, it may be that only partial euro and rupee trade may happen, meaning that certain countries may agree to accept rupee, certain countries may not agree to accept the rupee. Like for example, France has agreed, and rupee is acceptable in France. Like Italy has agreed to it too. Cyprus has agreed to it too. Then Armenia has agreed to it too. So there are countries, okay? Now, why I told you about top 40, top 50 economies? See, I told you about top 40 and top 50 economies is because it's not about the number of countries, it's about the countries. The top 50 economies, they trade with US as well, but they trade with the dollar among themselves too. But with rupee, that's not the case. But as the currency grows and as India's market grows, okay, as India's market will grow, you will see that all these countries will start to use the rupee among themselves too. Why? Because to save themselves from the economic shock. Whenever there will be economic shock, for example, in the South Asian region, Indonesia is supposed to be the fourth largest economy by 2050. But Indonesia goes into frequent economic shock simply because of the balance of trade problems. So because of balance of trade problems, Indonesia decided to trade in national currencies. Now, if in future, whenever Indonesia is going to go into shock, then what they're going to do, they're going to trade in yuan or they're going to trade in rupee. That's what they're going to do. And that's how it's going to be in the neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Burma, or Myanmar, or Sri Lanka, like that. And slowly, this is going to spread further into Afghanistan, then it's going to further expand into Iran, then it's going to go into other countries too. And India and UAE already trade in the national currencies. Okay. So trading in alternative currency or a reserve currency especially is a benefit for India, and it's beneficial for Japan, because Japan gets a massive market of a future superpower. Is that simple? Some people may like it, some people may not like it, but the reality is this: you cannot change that reality. Okay. And countries that see this thing, they play their game accordingly. Okay. Now, so these are the three reasons I can think of. I mean, I can go talk about on and on about lots of other reasons and all that too, but all in the end, these are the three primary reasons, and I have discussed all that at length. Now, what exactly is the conclusion, the end result of this whole entire thing? The end result is that, number one, let me actually share my slide here too, that US is basically stepping away or stepping back from Asia. What does that mean? It means that because Russia, China, India, all these major powers are coming up, so you cannot go and dictate your terms to these countries. And just few days ago, actually, Marco Rubio was saying that, oh, India is a great power, this, that, all that good stuff, huh? And so having a military presence in this region, in the Asian region, that actually can become a major problem. Why? Because it will become more and more conflict prone. And, or at least, that's what it looks like from afar, right? And if you look into it, then most of the Asian powers, I really don't believe that there will be any conflict or anything as such, because most of the Asian powers are the civilizational states, and they understand the need of harmony when it's needed, when the time asks for it. Now, other thing that's happening is, and this is very crucial shift here, and this is the data that I just actually crunched a couple of days ago, and I analyzed it, and I found that Asia is actually trading in national currencies. Most of the Asian countries are actually trading in national currencies. There are 48 countries in Asia, in the Asian continent. There are 48 countries, and out of those 48 countries, almost 25 countries are trading in the national currencies. And that is a big shift. Now, I'm not saying that all those countries are not trading in dollar, but the trade in the national currency has started, which means that dollar will slowly and slowly, even though it may be the reserve currency, but over the period of time is going to become an alternative currency where countries will choose to trade in their national currencies over the dollar. That's about it. And when that happens, then dollar's purchasing power is going to go down over the period of time, even though countries will accept it. And I mean, I don't know about the acceptance part. Sorry, I take that back. Actually, the acceptance part. Why? Because if they're trading in national currencies, then chances are that just to limit the power behind the dollar, they may simply stop accepting the dollar too. Accepting in the certain things, like for example, they may stop accepting dollar in tourism. Right? If you look into it, then every trade in the national currency, the national currency talk starts with tourism everywhere. India goes and India says, hey, we are going to trade in national currencies, but let's start with tourism first. So, in the dollar also same thing. They may start actually, after there is enough volume of trade in national currencies, at least in the major countries, then slowly and slowly they're going to shift away from the dollar too. These major countries may stop trading in dollar. It will all depend on how much trade volume they have with the United States as such. And so only time will tell. But right now, the trade in national currencies is increasing. And it's right now primarily because of the de-risking. Okay, it's not something de-dollarization or anything as such, but de-risking move is definitely there, and data supports it. All right. So this is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed, you learned something. Please do like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Take care.